Welcome to Eye on the Illini. This is Mike Cagley here with Brad Sturdy. We are looking at really pretty exciting finish of the game there. Got a little bit nasty at the end, but you got to give the Illini credit for pulling this one off. Brad, any thoughts on what we saw, the triple-double and all the other things going on for the game here?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Cool to see Kylan Boswell get that triple-double. I'm sure that probably I don't know that the Chicago State coaches loved it, but that's okay. But at the same time, I think that it's another example of, we talked about it last week, Brad Underwood telling Will Riley to keep shooting or Ben Rickhouse to keep shooting. This is why he's a player's coach, because he lets these guys do this. You could tell it was really important to Boswell to do this. And this was a great opportunity for him to do this, to get that triple-double. And Brad let him stay in the game there and play a little bit longer. I thought it was great. Really good. This is a great practice game, essentially. Work on some things. Everybody stayed healthy. Worked on some different lineup matchups and combos. And it was a really good win the way they dominated, scoring 117 points.
Yeah, and I will tell you, let's just go real quick. Rickhouse had 3 points. Boswell had 18, along with 10 rebounds, 10 assists. Ivasic had 23 points, along with 5 boards. Trey White scored 9, but he didn't miss from the field, and also had 2 assists and a rebound. Jacusionis had 14 points, so he ended his streak of 20-point games at 6, and he still had 4 rebounds. He had 4 assists and 1 turnover, so a good game there. Kerry Booth did not score. Gibbs Lawhorn had 16 points, also had 3 rebounds, 2 assists. AJ Red had a point, got 1 up there. Will Riley, 13 points, along with 4 boards and an assist. Jake Davis was up there with 6 points, and Jake also had 3 rebounds. And Morez Johnson had 11 points, 8 rebounds, and also managed to get a T. And Keaton Kutcher had 3 points. And if we want to go plus minus, I like doing it for a game like this. But poor Keaton, he was a -3, the only person in negatives. And then AJ Red was at 0. And then it went up to as high as a plus 47 with Kylan Boswell on the floor. So we had a game that a lot of guys were shooting. I think a lot of guys got their confidence. Ked, any thoughts after you watched this finish to the game here?
It was a good practice session. That's what I wanted. I was trying to be politically correct, but that's what I wanted to see. And you know what? When you watch today's game, there'll be some people upset with Coach Underwood because what he did for Kylan Boswell. But that's a player's coach. And the positive thing for me today was seeing the smile on those kids' faces. When they lose a game, fans can get upset and mad, and you get stupid hosts like me who say things that out of frustration. But at the end of the day, they're kids and they're trying to win. And seeing Kylan Boswell's face today made me happy, and watching the coaches have fun. That's what college athletics is supposed to be about. We talk a lot about NIL and all this kind of stuff. So I really do the fact that they made some good changes, and it's good for the kids.
Go ahead, Brad.
No, I think I agree with what Ken said. I'd already talked about being the player's coach. That was the first thing I thought of as well. The one thing I thought was good also was, let's pick a negative first. I thought defensively they were just okay today. I thought they didn't really get after it defensively all the time. They gave up some open threes, gave up some easy drives. So but when you score 117, you can be a little lackadaisical on D and get away with it. So I thought there's my negative for today. I thought everything else was good. You saw them attack the offensive glass. You saw them get to the line. You saw them drive and kick. I'd still like to see this team be a little better. The one area, and I think, Kasparis is fantastic at it. Kylan does a good job at times. Some of the other guys, whether it's maybe a Will Riley or Trey White, they can get in the paint. And sometimes they get stuck and they don't have that same patience the other guys have, where they can, because there are openings, whether it's a kind of a delay, play off 2 feet, get the kick, play off 2 feet, pivot, find a way to get to the basket. I think that's the one thing offensively I'd like to see them continue to develop, because they're so good at getting into the paint and and finding those gaps. And if they can do that and find the openings, you're going to get so many just wide open horse shots. And when you get those, you're going to win a lot of games in the Big Ten.
Brad, that you bring up a good point there, because as a coach, what do you usually tell teams to do on offense? You want to break down guys, you want to get into the paint, and you want to have two guys guard the ball and figure out where the opening is. And Illinois does a great job of getting into the paint, and then sometimes they're not as good about figuring out what they're going to do with it. When they start figuring that out, this team is going to truly be devastating, don't you think?
Yeah, I think that's the next step. And that's why you see the turnovers are sometimes an issue, because they do get in a little too deep, don't understand gaps, angles, whatever. And also it's the comfort of knowing where your other teammates are. And I think that's where they continue to grow. And that's where a game like today is important. People look at it and say, oh, it's just practice game, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's about them learning how to play with different lineups, different people, understanding how to play with each other. And because they're going to get in the paint all day long. And you saw that today. They're able to get to the basket. Now when you get in that situation, that this guy's going to be in this spot, whether it's a corner, whether it's a wing, whether it's at the top for a pick and pop type thing, taking that defender down with you and then throwing it out top, and Ivasic hitting the three. Little things. That's just all the part of the basketball play. And you got to learn to play, and you got to learn to trust each other. And you learn to trust each other through games like these.
Kid?
Well, yeah, he's right. That's why they scheduled the game, and it's not just Illinois. So if you look at all across the Big Ten today, they know the schedule's going to rev up on January 2nd. Everybody has these cupcake games today. Indiana's getting ready to play one. Ohio State allegedly tried to play one, but it was a little bit tougher than what they thought. So that's what you want to do. You want to be able to get some guys in, say, hey, we've gone through a season now. Let's work on these things that we need to get better at. They had 6 guys, I think, in double figures, and Trey White had 9. He was one playing away in double figures, and it's just really nice.
Yeah, I'm going to go through a couple players, just a few players here, just to look at their game, because I think people are listening and they're thinking about what they saw. Brad, I'm going to tell you right now, and we've said this before, I was totally wrong on Kylan Boswell. I really didn't think he was going to be as effective for this team. And so I got to really give him credit for that, what he's doing there. What are your thoughts about how well he is playing? Because I didn't think he could get to the free throw line like he is now. And I knew he could play good defense, but I had no idea how good he could be.
Look at his body. It's not soft anymore. There's nothing there. He's not got that. And the other thing we forget about Kylan Boswell, he's the age of a sophomore. So this is basically a guy making a sophomore leap at that age. He's gotten a great strength and conditioning program. He's quicker. He's more, and I think some of it, I talked to Kylan about this a little bit, and he said he's allowed to do things that he wasn't allowed to do at Arizona. And I'm not trying to bag on Arizona at all. They're obviously a great program, but playing with a guy like some of the guys he played with who aren't really great at sharing the ball, it makes it tough. And when you put a Caleb Love on a team, it changes the dynamic of that team, right? That's just the kind of guy who's going to get his, and he's going to have the ball all the time, and he's a volume scorer. And so I think he didn't say a name or anything, but he talked about how, it was just a different role, wasn't really allowed to do those things, wasn't given opportunities to do those things at Arizona. And I think that's a big part of it. So I think he's expanded his game, but also he's given opportunity. Underwood lets his guards play, and he lets them create and do things. And you can see that over the years with every player. He's really, the other thing about him that it's really impressed me is his leadership. And this is a guy who was not a leader at the first 2 years because he was the youngest. He's a young guy. And so now he's in a leadership role, and he's been fantastic. He's one of the old men on the team. He and really Humrickhouse are on the starting lineup, and Trey White. Those are the guys who have been in that role. And you can see whether it's Boswell, I think the two guys are Boswell and Humrickhouse, we're always celebrating the success of the other guys. And those are the guys who are almost always there, like being that guy, being that leader. When Jake Davis missed the 3 that would have given his 10th assist, he goes over and gives him 5. Those are little things that go unnoticed that do help your culture. And he's been a great culture guy.
Well, Mike, you mentioned it earlier. One thing that we talked about was how we saw him as a player early on. I think he's a different player. I think he's grown. I think his confidence is different. Getting away from Arizona was the best thing for him to develop as a player, because now he's an important part of the team, not only offensively but defensively as well. So I like the fact of what they're doing with him and his leadership. Like Brad said, he's a young guy, but he's played 2 years of college basketball. So I like what he's doing, and they're going to really need him, because when they go out to Oregon on Thursday, they've had some road games, but he really tries to up his game a little bit, and he's aggressive. One thing that we haven't talked about was free throw shooting. I think they said he shot 41 free throws or something like that. That was the number that we heard for a whole season, and he's got that many attempts already right now.
Yeah, and let's go down the line. I got a few other guys I wanted to talk about, but I thought today Ivisic and Jacusiones, I thought they both played excellent ball, and between the two of them, they ended up getting a grand total of 20 shots between the two of them. I don't know that there was a single forced shot there. I thought every shot they took was a good shot, and they ended up with 37 points. But boy, they were really effective with the ball today. Now I know some of that is just an effect of who they're playing, but I thought it was a really good showing for both players. Brad?
Yeah, I thought you saw them go to him early in the game in the post, and I think that established something. And then you see him expand and go out and shoot the three. So you saw inside and outside. And that expansion also was interesting to see that in the high-low with he and Morez, and they're a great matchup that way because of Ivasic's ability to shoot the ball from three. So I thought he was really good. Jacusiones is he's one of the best 5 freshmen in the country. I don't think there's any doubt about that. The dude can just do, and he continues to do extremely well. And they didn't really push him today. I think that was smart to get those guys out keep their minutes down today. And they should have fresh legs heading into the Big Ten, which is going to be a grind.
That was my thought. Exactly, Brad. You know what? Yeah, the record would have been nice to continue to see it, but it's not like they don't have 6 more games, so he could start it all over again on Thursday. It was good to get them to play. They haven't played since Missouri, the ball in their hands and playing against a different team, even though, no disrespect to Chicago State, they weren't a worthy opponent today. But it's just getting those other guys out there getting the minutes. And one guy, you talk about a highlight reel, was Draven Gibbs Longhorn. If he can provide some minutes like that off the bench, that's just a different weapon for this program. It really is. So, again, we mentioned Will Riley and Benjamin Rickhouse, but the sky's the limit for this team, and it's there. The talent is there. They just got to get hot, beat the teams they're supposed to beat, and still a couple of high-quality road wins. I think Thursday's game is a huge game for them, because the student section, like I mentioned at halftime, won't be there, and so this is an opportunity for Illinois to go out to Oregon and still a win.
Yeah, I think it's a big opportunity, and you look at the performance. I thought Will Riley played within himself today a little bit better. He also looked a little more relaxed. And then the other person that I was thinking about, you talked about Dre Gibbs Lahorn, and certainly he does a good job when he's got the physical opportunity and goes after it. And I know the athletes are bigger, faster, stronger in the Big Ten, but I'd like to see him just play with a little bit more confidence and a little bit more going downhill in a Big Ten game versus being a little more tentative on the start. But I thought both of those two played well today. And I also thought Trey White and Morez were in there. And again, between the two of them, they only took a grand total of 7 shots, but ended up with 20 points. My goodness, if they could do that every game, that's a really positive formula for this Illini team.
Yeah, you want to get to the stripe. I think you guys talk about Draven Gibbs Lahorn. The big thing for me with him is he's like Vinnie Johnson, right? He's like Andrew Toney, maybe, if you go back to the olden days. He's the microwave coming off the bench. This dude he is a volume scorer. And when you put him in the game, he can get shots up and he gets the basket. I think sometimes when your offense is stagnant a little bit, that's a guy who can come in and provide that burst. And then we also talk about, I think he's the guy who, we've always talked about transition. That might be the guy who can get some transition buckets. to get him out on the open floor, and get him attacking the basket. You saw obviously the dunk and the and one. It's really interesting to see what he can do. Maybe if we push it, he gets out on the wing, you push it up to him, and he attacks the basket. I think as his decision making improves, I think continues to improve. I think that's a guy who could provide that role for this team for 15 minutes off the bench and just bring in offense. And man, he can put points on the board in a hurry when he gets it going.
When he had that pass and he threw it, I was watching the game with my daughter, obviously, because I wasn't able to go to the game. I told her, I said, watch out. I knew that dunk was coming because that kid is a highlight. He's athletic. Trent Meacham mentioned it during the game several times. He's just a really different athlete. And he gets baskets in transition, which I like to see them do a lot more of. It's a different look, but it won't be that way every game. But he doesn't run from the competition. He likes that. He's not a bad on-ball defender. So I would really like to see him get more minutes if possible if he's producing. And another guy who seems to be just lost in the rotation is Kerry Booth. Hey, Kerry Booth? Is that his dad? Gary, I'm sorry. I remember his dad. That's really showing my age to talk about Kerry. But anyway, just to be honest with you, I think him offensively coming in, he was a decent shooter. But hopefully, at some point in time later in the season, maybe Big Ten tournament, they're going to have to use him because if you remember, that's what happened to Dame. He came in late toward the season and changed the whole dynamic look of the team.
This is the run my own business dream. This is the colleges paid for dream. This is the retire early dream. This is Busey, where your dreams and possibilities become moments through trusted guidance and expertise, through lifelong relationships. Because we're here to help you achieve the life you've always envisioned.
Yeah, I really wanted to save one guy for last, and I know that I'm going to do two here at once just to talk about performance tonight. I thought Jake Davis came in. He has the ability to shoot that three and pull his hand back a little bit as the defender comes at him, and he hits him. I can't do that, but I thought he looked good today. And Ben Rickhouse, 1 for 4 from the three. He had 3 rebounds, 2 assists, so I thought he got a little bit more involved. Ended up closing out the game today. But I think if you're looking at trying to build an asset, Underwood needs to continue what he's doing and build Ben up. I don't know that you're going to get much out of him if you decide to rip him down. But I think you keep letting him get shots and try to keep building his confidence.
Yeah, I agree. He's a guy, I think he's in a better role now. Now that Merez has developed into a more viable option with Ivisic, I think that Ben's in a better role where he doesn't have to play. There were games earlier, remember, he's playing 38 minutes a game, and I just don't think that's where he needs to be. And I'd like to see him in that 20 to 25 max range, and I think that's where he fits better. But again, that Merez has to not foul for that to be a likelihood. But in the emergency, Jake Davis could help there too. But the one thing about Humrickhouse is, again, does some good things on the defensive end, whether it's positioning and help defense, the little things that maybe we don't notice. I think last year, if you remember, we used to have the Coleman Hawkins debate where he'd give up buckets but then he had so many great, Mike and I know you and I talked about a ton. His help defense was so good.
Yes.
And I'm not saying Ben's at that level, but he is that guy. His help defense, he's in positioning. And Underwood, you even heard Trent Meacham talk about it during the game, and after talking to Brad Underwood about it. And I think that the hard part is, though, he's got to make open shots, and he missed a couple in that second half that were just wide open looks. And this is a guy who's a tremendous shooter. If you watch him shoot his form, he looks fantastic. He just needs to go in, and maybe it will. I think maybe he's putting too much pressure on himself at this point, even with all the support Underwood's given him. But I think you're going to need him. I'm not saying he needs to be a 35-minute-a-game guy, but you're going to need him, especially in certain games when you have foul trouble. And so it's good to see him get 3 rebounds, grab a couple assists, made a couple nice passes. So let's hope he starts making shots.
You know what I watched today, and I don't know if anybody will do this other than me, probably, because I'm sitting in a commission for a while. I noticed today his release point, Brad, too, is not the same. If you watch his release point, it's different. The first half, he didn't move it as much. The second half, there was one he shot right in front of the bench. It was going left before he even shot it. I'm saying this hopefully that the coaches listen to us, Mike, since we've talked about Morez a lot. But I'm going to tell you, if anybody go watch this game again, if you're bold enough to do that, his release point meanings when he shoots the ball, it is left, it's never the same. And to me, as a shooter and as a coach, that's all mental. He's hoping the ball goes in, and he's not thinking the ball's going to go in. It's not the same. So that's something that hopefully maybe I'll send a message to one of the guys that I know on the staff to say, hey, look at it, take it for what it is. But I'm telling you right now, I was paying because this shot is beautiful. He has one of the best looking shots on the team, and there's no reason that ball shouldn't go in the basket except for right now. I think, and it is messing with him. He will never say never. But the fact of the matter is his release point is the same.
Yeah, he's, and like I said earlier, we talked, you almost want to make him do drills where all he's going to think about is his passing. So maybe he doesn't think about his shooting and then the shooting gets adjusted. I think we've all golfed enough to know that you can work on one thing at golf and mess something up and then take weeks to try to fix to get it back to the way it was. And sometimes shooting's a little bit like that. The other thing I think was really interesting about today's game was I thought we saw a lot better help defense. Now, part of it was because, again, you're not playing against the greatest offense we've ever seen at 0-15. But I thought Morez coming across to just destroy a shot up from the help side. I thought defensively, I thought they played a pretty good game. And I'm not talking about who they're playing against. I'm talking about their position on the floor and where guys were. I thought that Coach Underwood might be slightly happy about where they're at. I don't think he's going to say anything to them, but I thought they didn't have as many of those moments where they were out of position and then had to foul.
Yeah, I thought they're good. There were a couple times in the first half when they had some weird lineups in, and you saw that where they had same side help. And yeah. they help from the strong side. You do not help from the strong side. That is not what you do. And they gave up a couple of threes out of that on back-to-back possessions. And so I guarantee you that will be they'll be talking about that. But that was with some bench guys in. It was different lineups and matchups and things. But other than that, I thought it was pretty good. I thought they gave up more threes than they normally do. I thought they really weren't. But this is a team that doesn't shoot the ball well from three either. So this was one of their best shooting days for Chicago State from three. So this is a team that hasn't shot the ball from a percentage standpoint from three at a high clip. So it'll be interesting to see how they change against Oregon, because obviously the scouting is going to be a huge part of that. And the way they defend the Ducks are quite good. And they're going to have good help defense against Oregon on, what is it, Thursday?
Yes. It's folks, this is where the college schedule puts hair on your chest, because now all of a sudden now it's a Big Ten opponent. There's going to be 2 a week like clockwork. And I think this is where all these tough games that they've played in this preseason or non-conference season, they start paying off, because I have to think Illinois has played a few of these teams. They've essentially played Big Ten games, and they should be prepared for what's going to the gauntlet that's going to start here on Thursday.
Yeah, if the SEC is the best conference, they're 2-2 against the SEC, so they should be ready to go. So that tells you that they're playing that level of opponent week in and week out, and that doesn't even count. They've already played 2 conference games. Pretty tough non-conference, and still have Duke coming up, plus the 18 Big Ten games. Woo, not for the faint of heart.
And that's why they had enough non-conference schedule. Brad knew the Big Ten was going to be tough, so now this is a chance to go out. And this is a grind, not just for Illinois. It's going to be tough, but it's going to be tough for other teams. Think about Wisconsin and Oregon playing, or Wisconsin and UCLA. So it's not just Illinois will be the team having to go up and face all these new teams in the conference, but those conference teams also have to come up to the Midwest to play. It's going to be a grind. So right now, that's why it was important, I thought, like Brad mentioned, to have guys like Ibisic and KJ and Trey White rest a little bit. So today was a good again, tune up, if you will, practice game, whatever you want to call it. But now is going to determine what seed you get in the tournament. If you're in the tournament, Illinois has an opportunity that a lot of schools don't have because they still have one more great opportunity for a non-conference game. Now, having said that, if they can pull off a win against Duke, and if they finish in the top 3 in the Big Ten, they're going to get a real nice seed in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, and also wanted to throw out there, Brad Underwood is now in 4th place all by himself in most wins for the Illini basketball coach, either 151 or 152 victories here. And if you really think about the house cleaning that he had to do the first 2 years, I really wish there would have been a transfer portal a little earlier, because if you look, Illinois has been on the cutting edge of using the transfer portal. Hey, Brad, if we hadn't had things the way they were with those old rules, we might have had a couple more NCAA tourneys at the rate Underwood uses that portal.
Oh my goodness, that's so true. They would have had to bring guys in right and left when you got to overhaul a roster and need talent immediately. And it is hard. It was different back then because it was a rebuild, because it took a couple of years to do it, because you were literally counting on people sitting out a year and then developing and then going and playing. Now you just get them and they're good and you play them. And it makes life a lot easier than it did right off the bat. And you don't have to. And I think that's where, take out those first 2 years. Since that time, Underwood's been awfully good at Illinois.
Continue for 11 minutes.
One of the things he's been really good at is adjusting. He makes really good adjustments to what's available. Every time the NCAA or they make a rule, he really adjusts to it to utilize to his advantage. A lot of people, they can't do that. There's some coaches, I mentioned it before, Tom Izzo's not a fan of it. Just knowing what I know, a lot of the Michigan State fans they're not pleasantly pleased with the fact that Tom Izzo doesn't love the transfer portal. Brad Underwood does. That's a good sign. If you have a coach not willing to change, that's tough. And it makes it tough for your team. It makes it tough for the fans. And it puts you at a disadvantage. Could you imagine if Brad Underwood didn't want to use the transfer portal and just stuck with our high school kids right now? They wouldn't be sitting at 10-3 or 9-3, whatever they are right now. So I like the fact that he's willing to make a change or adjust.
Yeah, no,
the other thing about his adjustments. Think about his adjustments is think about the style of play. When you went from having a guy like Kofi and Io, and then you go to a team that went through Matt Meyer playing ISOs, and then you went through a team that had Terrence Shannon, but you played Marcus Damas booty ball in the half court, and then now everything's a ball screen. The adjustments and changes that they made over the years to fit their personnel is really impressive. I don't think people give them enough credit for that.
I agree, and I think he does. I think people get too hung up on what they think or don't think happens at halftime, as opposed to the way Underwood's kind of constructing teams. And you've got a lot of older coaches who are just saying, "Screw it, I'm out of here." And you're seeing that across college football and basketball right now. I don't think Underwood is one who is going to do that. And I think between maybe his own personality coupled with coaching with his son, who's a generation or two younger, they're finding ways to modernize and try to stay with the cutting edge of the game, despite Underwood being 60 years old. So I think that is a real benefit. And John Lee says Illinois should be a top 10 team next month. I certainly hope so. I got to be honest with you. The only reason I care about the ratings is if Illinois is a top 10 team, that means they're at the top of the Big Ten. So that means I'm excited. But I want them to win a lot of games in the Big Ten to move up more than I care about the fact that they're in the top 10. Does that make sense, Brad? Or Ked?
Yeah, for me, it definitely does. And I'm going to tell you, I'm a fan of rankings. Some people say they don't matter, and they do. They matter to players, they matter to recruits, they matter to fans, and it matters from a media standpoint. Because no matter which network you watch, if you're a top 25 team, you're going to be on all networks. You're going to be on different, obviously the Big Ten network, but ESPN is doing their own things. But if you're a top 25 team, you're going to be seen on those programs. So it does matter to me. And what was frustrating, not to make a Debbie Downer on this conversation, that loss to Tennessee a game changer because I think they would have been a top 12 team in the country, probably stayed in the top 25 all season. Because if you lose a game or two, because when teams look at you, they'll think, oh, we'll take them out, but they did beat Tennessee. But they still have a chance to prove themselves. They have a chance to go on a good run here and to beat some high-quality teams. Like I said, you're going to get Oregon and Washington with no students. Then you're going to get a good Penn State team at home. Then you're going to get USC at home. Indiana on the road is going to be great. It's going to be a welcoming back party at Indiana for Luke Goody. And then at Michigan State. There are no easy games. I'll challenge anybody to look at the schedule and tell me what's a good game. I'm looking at it as we speak. There is not a game on this schedule that you can walk into honestly and say right now, I'm going to win this game, or Illinois is going to win this game. Obviously, you can't say Northwestern anymore for your old timers because they've already proven that they can beat you. You have to bring it every night. And this is the only concern that I have with a young team because last year's team knew what was at stake. This is tough. I just looked at that schedule. And again, there's not an easy, winnable game on that schedule.
No, I agree. And now, also, can't tell you the last time I saw an offensive charge call. I'm going to tell you one thing. I don't care if I don't see another charge call in ages because I will tell you the bottom line is I am so tired of watching the help charge. Nobody comes to a game to watch a guy like me come off and take a charge for Michael Jordan. And that's what there's so many of the charges were those help charges where some guy comes off from the weak side and stands there and draws a charge. So I'm actually going to say that I am happy that we aren't seeing a lot of charge calls. I want to see guys go at the basket and make exciting plays. Ked, am I totally wrong on that?
No, Mike, you're not. Without a doubt, I agree with you. I want to see exciting plays. That's what they want to see. I don't mind seeing freedom of movement. No one wants to watch a basketball game where you see the officials. Today, the officials didn't come into play. I guess it wouldn't come into play. Win by 800 points, I guess. But you're right. That's what you want to see. Even in football, I want to see a football game. I want to see a basketball game, baseball, where the official doesn't decide the game. And do they make mistakes? Yes, we all know that. I think our biggest complaint, Mike, is the inconsistencies for the long haul over a game or no games. You see the same official making the same mistakes. As a analyst and as a reporter, the one thing, and I know as fans, the one thing you don't want to see is when a game comes on and we report that Mike Cagley's doing the basketball game and fans throw up and think, oh my gosh, not Mike Cagley again. That shouldn't happen. So,
yep.
I mean, that's what they have to fix.
Yep. So we're going to wrap it up on this one, folks. It was a great way for the Illini to close out 2024. They certainly are ready now for a Big Ten season that will test them each and every step of the way. But I think I'll speak for Brad and Ked. I think you agree. We think this team should compete for the Big Ten title. They should be at the top of the Big Ten. Whether they can pull it out or not, we will see. But I think they should be one of the 3 or 4 teams that will be battling for that position. Let's hope for no injuries, and we will see where this team goes. As one non-Illini thing, word just came out that former President Jimmy Carter passed away. Any former president, in my opinion, saddened when they're gone. Certainly that man, regardless of how you felt about him politically, led a unbelievable life as a former president and certainly did wonders for helping many people. So rest in peace, Mr. President. Ked, do you have any final thoughts before we sign off?
It's Big Ten basketball season, men and women, and it's a lot going on this week. The women play again against Washington. The big football games coming up against South Carolina. And then Thursday, Big Ten men's basketball tips off again. So it's going to be an exciting year. And the good thing about it, if you're an Illini fan listening to this podcast, you have 3 teams that are currently in season right now that have a legitimate chance of doing some special things. So it's a good time to be an Illini fan right now.
Yep, and you'll see in my heat checks that comes out in the next day or so, I've got a couple predictions for 2025, and I'm bullish on some things that are happening under Josh Whitman for the Illini athletic department. And I think we're going to see So this is going to be an era that rivals the 80s. And I think probably with a little bit more discipline in the athletic director position, I think there's much more opportunity for sustainability that maybe the 80s didn't have, that Josh Whitman won't be quite as free with and some liberal with some things as Neil Stoner was. So I think there's some opportunity for that. So be looking for that. And we will have an eye on the Illini after the bowl game against our friends from South Carolina, which is a very good team. And we will also have a live show at halftime, and we will have a little more time to talk because halftimes have big shows and stuff like that. So if you want to tune in, should be a lot of fun. We will try to make sure it's entertaining for you. And until that game rolls around on Tuesday, I think it kicks off at 2 p.m. Central. Go Illini.